Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's another season of Full Press NFL Sunday. That's right, it's week one. It's September the 11th, 2022. And Braden, your hair's a little bit longer, but that back of your screen is still as red as ever. And I'm pretty sure we're all excited for this to finally get going after months and months and months of talking about the same things over and over and over again. So, everyone, welcome to Full Press NFL Sunday. I'm your host, Ian Glendon, and we are going to be here for the next half hour or so as we get you ready for today's action and kind of get you geared up for the NFL season. And then, of course, today at 11:30, you can join our friend Kyle Senra as he kicks off our Full Press NFL Fantasy Sunday show coming up here at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. So, Braden, happy Sunday. Welcome to week one.
Yeah, it feels like this offseason was a little bit longer than most. It seemed like just the headlines were a little bit more exaggerated than usual this year. So can't wait to get the games going, and a lot of games that I'm really not sure how they're going to go either way. So just can't wait for the chaos to begin.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a crazy offseason in a lot of ways, just player movement, but not just the number of players that switch teams, but the who switch teams, obviously a lot of that news and everything centered around the AFC West in one way or the other, whether players were coming or going. So it's going to be very interesting to see some of the debuts today. Obviously, Tyreek Hill in Miami, Devontae Adams in Las Vegas, and there's other debuts like Carson Wentz, who's going to be starting for the Washington Commanders. And of course, you also have Baker Mayfield for Carolina against who else? Of course, the Cleveland Browns. So there are plenty of storylines heading into week one today. But before we get there, we will real quick talk about the one game that actually has happened so far, and that was the Bills and the Rams. And the Bills, obviously, as we know, fairly easily handled their opponent in the Rams. And look, I believe a lot of people, and rightfully so, think the Bills have a lot of very high ceiling this year, and that they're destined to be the number one seed. And looks like this might be the year they finally get to the Super Bowl. And look, I can't come up with a good argument against that. Let's put it that way. But as we saw on Thursday, even the most invincible teams can be vulnerable. And despite what the score ultimately ended up being, they had some turnover issues on offense, which, we all know any turnovers are going to keep any team in any game. And, it's not as easy as going out and just showing up on Sunday to go out there and win. They really got to do it. So there's a lot of pressure on this Bills team. They passed the first test. They took care of business against the defending Super Bowl champion, who, in my opinion, looked like they hadn't played a preseason game or anything together, which was the case. So what was your impressions of that game in general, and, Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills, and kind of this hype that's surrounding them?
Yeah, I think my first kind of takeaway has to be the Bills just kind of constantly getting pressure on Matthew Stafford. I don't think they even technically blitzed on one play. I think they basically rushed four and less and kind of stayed in their nickel and zone defense, kind of forced the passes to stay in front of them. So I think just seeing the kind of addition that Von Miller himself made is really impressive for a guy that kind of came to the Rams last year and really kind of seemed to kind of go back to what his old self was in his prime. Not that he really ever, faded away, but I think it looked like a rejuvenated player, and he looks even more, more polished, more fast this year with the Buffalo Bills. So just seeing that one addition alone is going to be interesting on an already stacked defense. But yeah, I think offensively it just it seemed to get away from some of the things here and there that Brian Dable did. So Ken Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator, I think just kind of letting Josh Allen throw a lot more quick passes and just kind of maybe pick his spots with a lot more play action. So they weren't going to really unload the playbook a lot in week one, but just some of those wrinkles that they showed was kind of really interesting when they were already a tough offense to stop, going kind of from a lot of 10 and 11 personnel to more 12 personnel Thursday night.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you brought up Von Miller because obviously he was, 2 sacks all over the place, and certainly his presence on the Bills was almost equally as felt as his absence from the Rams in their defense. And if and I'm not saying this is a big if, but given his age, I've kind of looked at this Buffalo Bills team as having. I think a lot of people look at it as a window that is just cracking open and it's huge, but I kind of look at it opposite and I say this is probably their best shot this season. And part of the reason why I think that this window is going to be limited is because I think the AFC, even just this offseason, has gotten better across the board. And I think there's teams that are kind of in that no man's land right now where we're not quite sure who they are or what they are that have the potential. I'm talking about teams like Miami and New England who play later today who, have talent on their roster, but there's question marks, not in a bad way, just kind of uncertainty when it comes to their quarterbacks and what they can do. So the point is, I think the AFC is going to be very deep, particularly in their own division. And Von Miller, look, you gave him that huge contract for these first couple seasons. You don't plan on him being the player he is for 6 seasons. It's just not going to happen. So you got to maximize what you have with him. Hope for a little bit of luck, and by that I mean you stay relatively healthy. I mean, obviously Josh Allen goes down, or some of these key defenders go down, and then you're talking about a completely different outlook for this team. That's the fine line that we have right now. But in terms of going out and passing the first test, absolutely. Absolutely. You go out, you overcome turnovers. I mean, turnovers aren't great, but really good teams know how to overcome those. They don't cripple them. They can withstand a few turnovers here and there. So, I look at this as a very nice opening round or opening week game for Buffalo because let's face it too. I mean, this team has a lot of pressure on them. There's a
Right.
lot of hype surrounding this team, and for a team that hasn't yet to accomplish anything, and I don't mean that as an insult. You have to start somewhere. Um, they have a lot of expectations on them that usually follow a team that's already won a championship or has been in the championship game or something along those lines. So Buffalo, impressive win against the defending Super Bowl champions. Who I'll ask you this, Braden, before we move on. Is there any concern with the Rams, or is this just look? They came out a little bit flat. The excitement of the opening night. Sometimes these teams can lay an egg, and you don't think too much about it. Are you concerned with the Rams at all in any area?
I think the biggest area just has to kind of be Matthew Stafford. He didn't really look comfortable, and I don't know if that's maybe just the lack of reps and kind of the lack of throwing schedule that he had with his elbow injury. But it just seemed like he had a lot of happy feet, and they already got a couple of banged up offensive linemen, and just we kind of saw what the lack of Odell Beckham Jr. did to how the Bills were covering Cooper Cup, and of course the depth they have to be able to kind of double and triple him all night. So I think just if Stafford's going to be able to kind of get comfortable and really kind of find a way to keep this team afloat, if Cooper Cup's not able to kind of take over the day, basically.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously you're trying to replace obviously Van Jefferson, who wasn't on the field. You're trying to replace Odell Beckham Jr. and Allen Robinson was virtually non-existent. Now that could change with time as they get comfortable with each other, but the season, as long as it is, it's really short.
Right.
So you got to be able to figure out those hiccups early and quickly because it could be a little bit too long. You could wait a little bit too long and end up hurting yourself in the long run. So, like I said, I'm not terribly worried about the Rams. I do share the same concerns as you because, look, I mean, Matt Stafford is who Matt Stafford is. He's going to make some nice plays, and he's also going to throw interceptions at the worst time. I mean, that's just who he is. That's not going to change. It's who he was with Detroit. It's who he's been with Los Angeles, and that's what we saw on Thursday night. Now, last season they were able to put it all together. Again, a very fine line between success and failure. I mean, you're talking about, everyone talks about 13 seconds with Buffalo. Well, the Rams were very fortunate that Todd Bowles decided to blitz there in the final seconds in their divisional matchup with the Buccaneers, because if not, we're talking about a epic collapse in the playoffs that would only be shared with just a few other games in NFL history when you're talking about being up 27-3 at one point. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm not terribly concerned. If we're talking about the same things in a week or two, then we can probably turn on the panic meter with the Rams, regardless if they win or lose, because there are some unfortunate long-term issues that could pop up with this team. So anyways, before we get to our game picks, and we're going to do them a little bit differently this week than we will the rest of the way out, I want to talk about kind of just the season as a whole, because, obviously it's week one. There's of all the storylines, all the player movement, we've had a lot of time to think about who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl, who's going to be the MVP and everything like that. And I'm looking up on the screen right now, and I already I have an idea of who you've picked, as well as myself and some of our other full press coverage staff. And I'll share that here with you in a minute. But are you, and I know the answer to this question, are you buying into the Buffalo Bills hype? And we'll use this as a transition to this bigger discussion.
Yeah, I think kind of the analogy, or I guess the line of thinking that I've kind of used, is they kind of taken, this next step each season. Even though they kind of got knocked out around earlier last year, they've kind of shown they've been kind of able to find ways to find cracks in the top opponents' armors in big games. So I think just kind of they've shown they've kind of used this program or used this kind of strategy that's really kind of been unmatched in terms of their brand of football. So I think just this is maybe the year they kind of continue to climb that ladder. And I think sometimes the hype, I think this team is got the right people to kind of just buy into it and respond to it in ways that maybe not a lot of other teams would.
Now, for those reasons, I'm almost doing the opposite. So I am buying into what Buffalo's doing to a point. Like I feel like the hype, I think is out exceeded who they are, and I think this will open up an opportunity for another team, like in my opinion, the Chargers, another team from Los Angeles, who in a lot of the same ways have been kind of knocking at that door, climbing the ladder, and in my opinion, I thought they and by they I mean Brandon Staley solely himself, blew an opportunity for them to win the division last year. So I think this is a team that is going to make that big leap from not being in the playoffs to potentially making a run to the Super Bowl, and we're going to get to that here in just a minute, because you have. And actually, I'll share it now, so it doesn't look like I'm cheating, and people, have have an unfair advantage when it comes to knowing what's going on here. But excuse me, you do have the Buffalo Bills winning the Super Bowl, and which again, if you're going to make that argument, I can't argue against that. I can't make a great case against it, because based on what we've seen, based on what the players that they have on offense, on defense, you're going to be hard pressed to convince me that Buffalo can't make it. Now, I can lean on their history and say, oh, well, it's the Buffalo Bills. Of course, they're not going to make it to the Super Bowl. So maybe that's where my pick comes in, because ultimately I do end up going with the Chargers to make it out of the AFC. And look, for a lot of the reasons Buffalo is getting hype, I think the Chargers deserve some too. Now, I think they have a little bit more to prove. I think Buffalo has been a little bit more consistent, and I'm not a huge Sean McDermott fan, but I'm certainly not a Brandon Staley fan. So, I would choose Buffalo's coaching over the Chargers every single Sunday. But there is a chance that Justin Herbert could do some of the things and do exactly what Josh Allen is being hyped to do. And conversely, the talent on both sides of the ball for the Chargers is pretty darn impressive, and you could argue might actually end up being better than Buffalo's, assuming that they're healthy.
Yeah, I think with the Chargers, it's kind of been, I think what they've really done a good job of is just kind of accumulating veteran talent that is basically ready to kind of pounce at the right time. I think basically what the Chargers I think have done. You mentioned kind of the window for Buffalo earlier. I think it might be a little bit different for the Chargers, where I think they're just kind of now hitting their stride. So I think with the veteran players, it's really interesting because of health reasons and other just kind of contract disputes on other teams. We've really not really seen the best of some of these veteran players in a long time. So um, I think you kind of make a good point that this is the year. Maybe if you're looking at a roster construction perspective, this could be, I think, a team that finally does challenge Buffalo because I think really both sides of the ball, kind of premium positions when you're thinking about building your roster. There's really no major weaknesses or major worries that I think you would have with the Chargers.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously, by looking on the screen, and folks that might just be listening to this, I did choose the Chargers to, and this was not easy. And people think, oh, you just hate the Chiefs. No, I don't hate the Chiefs. I'm looking at it in terms of I I. I compare the Chiefs and the Packers a lot because there are a lot of similarities in terms of what they went through in the offseason, what they lost. I think the Chiefs did a far better job than the Packers at replacing, or at least coming close to replacing, the raw talent of their receiver. And obviously Devontae Adams with the Raiders now, and Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins. So I still need to see. I need to see it from Kansas City because, like, as much as I don't think that Tyreek Hill, like, I think the quarterback obviously is the most important player on the field. I do think Tyreek Hill was a unique and greatly utilized piece to the puzzle for this offense. And a lot of that has to do with, well, as much as you can get guys like Juju Smith-Schuster to make up some of the yards, who on that team can take a pass 3 yards in front of the line of scrimmage and go 75 yards and be a threat to do that just about every single time they touch the ball? And I think about that, and it's not so much that I think the Chiefs' offense is all of a sudden going to take a huge step back, but I think it's a fine line from being that one of those top tier offenses to one of just another really great offense in this league, because I think there are a lot of really great offenses. And I
Right.
think San Diego, the Chargers are one of them. So I think maybe a slight step back from the Chiefs offensive group is going to open the door for the Chargers to come close to matching that. And again, the Chargers aren't short of talent. And I think the talent gap has certainly closed between the two teams.
Yeah, and I think another thing kind of to go along with the top offense of the Chargers is the Chiefs are really young defensively. I think it's going to be a big learning curve these first 6 weeks. They got teams like of course Chargers week 2, but also Tom Brady and the Bucks and Josh Allen and the Bills kind of in this first stretch of the season. So those are games I think you're definitely gonna kind of see those learning curves and teaching moments come out for this young defense who added 7 rookies this year. 6 of them made the active roster. So a lot of those were in premium spots, either at defensive end or in the secondary. So I think that's also something that if people necessarily haven't been paying close attention to the Chiefs, you got to kind of keep in mind for this team is that youth on defense.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. It's there's going to be some transition in this division. You have elite quarterbacks at every level now. I mean, different levels of elite, and you can argue where they rank among each other. But I mean, the point is, you have 4 quarterbacks that have accomplished a good amount in this league to be considered, obviously more than just a guy. Even
Right.
Derek Carr. I mean, again, I'm not trying to sit here and knock one or the other. I mean, you have a couple, or one MVP, a couple Super Bowl champions, but also guys that obviously we just talked about Justin Herbert. I mean, it's only a matter of time before he has something like that under his resume as well. So, look, Derek Carr. I mean, this is a team that I think is going to be very well coached. I'm actually very eager to see Josh McDaniels in this second role with the Raiders. It's not showing up here on the screen, but I actually picked him to win Coach of the Year this year in Josh McDaniels. And I think for a number of reasons, you're going to see largely, I mean, I think Devontae Adams is going to be a huge difference this season. We'll see what happens beyond, with an aging wide receiver. But I look at the Raiders as being a team that, despite all the things that they had to deal with last year, still managed to have some success. Now, again, it wasn't, great success, but it was some. And I think the stability and the talent that was added to this team is going to be the difference this season. Now, I don't think they're going to win the division. I think that the division's just too strong right now, and I don't think they're ready to overtake that. But really, the difference between being the second seed and the seventh seed is really, there is none at this point, because we all know that only the top seed gets the first round bye. And I think we both agree that Buffalo is going to get that. If I'm looking at our, AFC's number one seed, I don't have it on here, but considering I picked them to have the best record this season, one can only assume that I also picked them to be the AFC's number one team, unless I was like Stephen A. Smith and I contradict myself like that. Anyways, but as you can see, though, I do disagree with you when it comes to who's winning the Super Bowl. And I've spent many years following one very simple principle. If I choose Tom Brady to win a Super Bowl, I have better than normal shot than just about everyone to win my bet. And so far, I'm more than 50% correct throughout his career, which again is pretty impressive over 20 years. Look, I mentioned the game a little bit earlier. This is a team that poor showing in the playoffs, obviously almost completed the 27-3 comeback. You could argue, maybe if they beat the Rams, then it's probably a good chance that they go on and beat the Bengals, so on and so forth. But we don't live in a world of fantasy. I mean, this was reality, and what happened was they got knocked out. However, this team is still old but talented, and it's not just at the quarterback position. I mean, you have guys like Julio Jones who are, one last grasp effort or chance to win a Super Bowl. I think the gamble is going to pay off for them. I don't think you're going to get, certainly not 1,600-yard Julio, but 600, 700 yards, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, something like that, I think is certainly feasible. And on top of that, I mean, look, I believe Tom Brady should have won the MVP last season.
Right.
I still think he's the best quarterback in the league. And whenever you have that, you're always going to be a Super Bowl contender. And I think this is going to be his last hurrah, certainly if they win. If they lose, I'm not going to put anything against him. I mean, the guy was retired for 40 days and still changed his mind. But I look at this as a team that, again, has talent. It's older, but you're being led by Tom Brady. You have Mike Evans. You have Chris Godwin, who last I saw was actually expected to play tonight on a limited role, which is quite impressive considering he wasn't guaranteed to play the beginning of the season at all. So yeah, I like the Bucks, and I like Tom Brady to right a wrong from last season and actually win the MVP with, I would assume, would be a third straight 40 touchdown season under his belt. Obviously with 17 games. And of course, like I said, just the way they play offense, they need Tom Brady to throw the ball. So,
yeah, I guess the biggest concern maybe I had with Tampa Bay in my picks was I do think the defense has got a little, maybe too many question marks for me to buy into right now. I guess looking at the secondary, kind of a lot of guys that are entering the last year of their deals. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see who steps up in that mold. And then I guess I just don't really know outside of Shaq Barrett what to expect from the pass rush. But I guess if there's one thing I do know with that is Todd Bowles is kind of one of the better ones at dialing up blitzes. So there's kind of the yin and yang to that. But I guess just the defensive questions is all that I'm really wondering about right now with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and again, that comes with the territory when you have an older team that, again, I mean, it's a fine line from being elite to just having a team that has too many injuries or too many roadblocks on the way. But I think the division, obviously, if you look at our picks as a group, it's one of the two divisions of the seven of us that, or I'm sorry, six of us that, seven. Apparently, I can't count. The image was playing tricks on my eyes there for a second. But of the seven of us who picked in this group, there's only two divisions that we all agreed on, and that was the NFC South with the Bucks and the Rams, and the NFC West. And I think those are pretty obvious. I don't see I mean, I know I've seen some people get excited about the Saints, but I just don't see them being a team right this moment. Let's just put it this way. I believe more of the 80% of what I've seen from Jameis Winston as opposed to the relatively small sample size we saw last year with a different coach. So
Right.
my judgment will be, I'll reserve judgment on them until I actually see what they're going to put on the field and how Jameis is going to play. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to go wrong with them looking across the board at our Super Bowl picks, and we have some Kansas City, we have a Baltimore in there, and Lamar Jackson, big contract year, who we just learned this morning that he declined a $230 million deal from the Ravens, not all of which was guaranteed, but still a pretty big deal to turn down. And we got some Buffalo hype in there, so we'll see. So let's forget about the future, okay? Let's talk about today, and we're going to talk about Sunday. And before I, hold on, let's see if I can pull this out. There we go. Okay, let's get our picks up there, because normally we go game by game by game, but we're kind of limited with our time because, like I said, at 11:30 we have our full press fantasy show coming up. So if you look on the screen, we have a pretty good set of matchups. I think obviously the theme going into week one is some of these revenge games, quote unquote, and I use these terms very loosely. But you have Denver at Seattle, obviously, on Monday, and then of course you have teams like Carolina hosting the Browns, which we all know is the return, or I'm sorry, not the return, but Baker Mayfield playing against his former team there, the Cleveland Browns. So first, what games, obviously we've already played Buffalo and Los Angeles, but what other games are sticking out to you the most on week one?
I guess I kind of have to go to the AFC East with New England and Miami, just because we've kind of seen what Miami's done to the Patriots down there in South Beach, but usually it's kind of been late in the season. So I'm interested to see maybe what other new tricks maybe Bill Belichick has up his sleeve today. Even though I went with Miami, I still think Mac Jones, despite all the questions about the play calling and everything, I still think Mac Jones is entering the season as the second best quarterback in that division, and I think he's still going to have a pretty good year. So I'm interested to kind of see how he responds against probably a top 5, top 10-ish defense in the league. So that's one, I guess, for me to start off that I really am intrigued to see. Just a lot of new faces, a lot of question marks surrounding kind of the coaching and the philosophies there. So now that we'll finally get to see it on the field, it's going to be interesting to see who gets that first division win.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, I had interest in that game as well, and I of the seven of us or six of us who picked, again, these things are playing tricks on my eyes here. Of the six of us who picked in this graphic, I was the only one who took New England. Now, again, that might be slightly biased. I'm not going to say otherwise, but kind of with you, it's like I still believe Mac Jones is the second best quarterback in this division. And, the reality of it is I didn't see anything last year that makes me believe that, this team is going to take a massive step back. Now, we're going to see how this season plays out, and this would be a great first win for them. But it's going to be difficult nonetheless. And I will say, you'll have to believe me when I say it, I did waver back and forth just a little bit on this pick. I wasn't 100% committed to my Patriots pick, but I did go with it, and I'm glad I did, because I was the only one who believed, just like I'm the only one who believes in Houston to upset Indianapolis. One of the games I'm actually looking forward to, and it's really because of one player. It's Trey Lance in San Francisco. And it's not that I'm like a huge Trey Lance fan. At this point, I'm just curious to see give us an idea of what we're going to get out of him. We're not going to get the big picture because you can't tell in one game. It's impossible. Anyone who tells you otherwise, they're lying. But we will get some hint and some indication as to what kind of player he could be. And I think that's going to change a lot, because like I look at San Francisco right now and I'm like, well, they check a lot of the boxes on every level on both sides. But there's this massive question mark at quarterback. And it would have been a huge question mark with Jimmy Garoppolo too, but even more so now with Trey Lance, just because, again, I mean, what are we going to get out of him? I have no earthly idea who this player is, what he's capable of, and I'm actually kind of excited to see what he's going to be able to do. So I guess outside of the biased homer picks, I'd say that would be my number one team to be excited to see, or game to see, outside of like obviously the Patriots game. And Bucks Dallas tonight is pretty straightforward. We know Tom Brady 6-0 against Dallas. I think they're going to be all right.
Yeah, and I guess with Trey Lance, it's really interesting because he's not really played a lot of real life game reps the last couple of years. I'm pretty sure he opted out that final year when North Dakota State had their season moved due to COVID, and then you had the whole draft process.
Mhm.
So really a guy that hasn't been on the field for a lot of live reps in a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of differences Kyle Shanahan has. You have a little bit more rushing ability with Trey Lance than you did with Jimmy G, and maybe a little bit more arm talent there too at this point, which may not be saying much, but just kind of seeing what kind of new designs Kyle Shanahan has is going to be really interesting. So I think no George Kittle today, but a lot of people are kind of expecting a breakout for Brandon Ayuk. So maybe that'll be somebody that Trey Lance kind of gets going with early this season.
Now, before we take off here, I got to ask you: Are you concerned about your Packers pick today? Because as we learned, no Alan Lazard, no David Bakhtiari. Could be a pretty difficult game. I mean, it already was a difficult game for Green Bay, but going to Minnesota on the road, concern? Thinking
Yeah,
about wagering a bit?
yeah, that was one of the games I really wasn't sure. I think for me, it kind of came down to what I kind of expect out of Green Bay's defense. We know Minnesota can kind of put up a lot of points, but I think just looking at this secondary and what they can kind of do to take away guys like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, I think that's really the only kind of saving grace that I could point to. I just think this defense may be one of the best in the league, and maybe just one play here or there could be the difference in a tight game. But yeah, it was one that I really wasn't sure either way, but opted to go with Green Bay's defense.
Well, that's going to do it for us here today. Like I said, a little bit shortened show from what we will normally do, but next week, definitely join us live around 10 o'clock, and we will be bringing back our prop bets, our full game-by-game predictions, all that stuff. But for now, you have to take a look at what's on your screen right now and let us know later how wrong we were, or at least how right we were. I have a feeling I'm going to go perfect today. That's my goal. I'm going to go absolutely perfect, even though I started 0-1. Just ignore that first game pickup there. I meant to pick Buffalo. It was a mistake. Wrong button, Anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned. In about 20 minutes, we have our Full Press NFL Fantasy Show coming up, and hopefully they will put you on the path to victory this week. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter, Full Press NFL, fullpresscoverage.com, fullpresshockey.com for all you hockey fans out there. And we will talk to you next Sunday.